Europe is going through its own challenging circumstances, many of which have strategic implications. But beyond that, there have also been overarching developments that could redefine the global order itself. We may be located in different parts of the world, but despite that, perhaps even because of that, it is extremely useful for us to exchange views regularly and to share assessments. Among India's major relationships, I believe that the one with the European Union and Europe, and obviously with its member states, has the most room to grow today.
There's no such thing as a collective West. There's no such thing as a global South. There are but nations who can dialogue for their mutual interests. And we are stronger together to defend international law, sovereignty for nations, and peace. And it is also the first time in 35 years of existence that this Weimar format has a non-European guest. The relations between the European Union and such a strategic partner as India are very important to us. And I express my satisfaction regarding the reduction of import of Russian oil to India, because this is financing the war machine of Putin.
Thank you all. Let me begin by appreciating the invitation, Minister Barrow, to the Weimar format meeting. And to Ministers Wadaful and Sikorsky, let me thank you for the pleasure of your company, your time, your views. I think we had really short but very deep and very open discussions on a range of issues today. Before we did that, earlier in the afternoon, Minister Barrow and I spent some time discussing our bilateral relationship. France is our earliest strategic partner in Europe. I think the quality of our ties is something very special. So we discussed our bilateral cooperation, global issues. We hope to welcome President Macron in India soon. So I had a good day even before the Weimar format meeting. Now, where India is concerned, this is the first time that we are engaging in this format. And our discussions were largely centered on three issues: India-European Union relations, the Indo-Pacific, and the Ukraine conflict. One context for doing so is the deepening engagement that we have with Europe. It is reflected in a collective endeavor with Brussels, but it is also sustained by efforts from individual European member states. As these conversations advance and cooperation deepens, it is natural that we have smaller group interactions that support this larger direction, and I think that is what we see today. A second context is, of course, a world that is under churn. We have been witnessing for quite some years now that churn in the Indo-Pacific. Europe is going through its own challenging circumstances, many of which have strategic implications. But beyond that, there have also been overarching developments that could redefine the global order itself. We may be located in different parts of the world, but despite that, perhaps even because of that, it is extremely useful for us to exchange views regularly and to share assessments. Among India's major relationships, I believe that the one with the European Union and Europe, and obviously with its member states, has the most room to grow today. We have tremendous unrealized potential and many new areas to explore. It is appropriate that this format, which has brought us together, has three very important European partners. My discussions today leave me confident that they will support that effort to take India-Europe ties to the next level. At the end of the day, the world is moving in a multipolar direction. Factors and events that make it more volatile and uncertain also make a very powerful argument for deeper collaboration among those who are like-minded, those who have convergence, and those who have shared views. That is the exercise that has brought us together. And let me conclude once again by thanking my colleagues for what was a very, very useful evening.
Messieurs les ministres, mesdames et messieurs, je suis particulièrement heureux d'accueillir mes collègues
I'm particularly happy to have my colleagues here with me today at the Quai d'Orsay.
Le ministre des Affaires étrangères de la République fédérale d'Allemagne,
the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Germany,
Radek Sikorski, nous formons ensemble
Vice Prime Minister of the Republic of Poland, Radoslav Sikorski. Together we are the Weimar Triangle, which meets regularly
ces dernières années,
and which in recent years has decided to take the initiative to give impetus to action within the EU. And I'm very happy to welcome the Minister of External Affairs of India, Dr. Jaishankar, for this unprecedented event. Unprecedented because it is a twice first time. It is the first time that a non-European partner has been invited to participate in the Conference of Ambassadors beginning this week. And I wished to honor India, and that is not by chance. It is because France has the G7 presidency this year, and India has the BRICS presidency in an increasingly violent world where balances are being questioned. It is important to build bridges between centers of stability, dialogue, and responsibility. We need to step out of a bloc-based logic. There's no such thing as a collective West. There's no such thing as a global South. There are but nations who can dialogue for their mutual interests. And we are stronger together to defend international law, sovereignty for nations, and peace. And it is also the first time in 35 years of existence that this Weimar format has a non-European guest. So that triangle formed by France, Germany, and Poland is one of the main engines of a political Europe. And today we decided to open it to India because a major agreement between the EU and India is underway and will amount in the next few weeks in a summit on the 27th of January. And that will be a decisive point in the strategic rapprochement between our two bases. And that sends a message. Europe is aware of the sheer scale of the challenges it faces and is organizing in order to confront them. We saw this yesterday during the Summit for European Security and Ukraine, convened by the President of the Republic. That showed that security is being built in Europe and is also being built with non-European partners. And on the initiative of the President of the Republic, the Prime Minister of the UK, and the German Chancellor, a coalition of the willing was created. And for the first time, more than 30 countries from Europe, North America, and Asia have decided to pool their military planning in order to ensure that peace in Ukraine can be lasting once it exists. And that rests on the idea that we should deter from any future aggression by offering credible security guarantees to Ukraine, support its military and its sovereignty. That is a historic turning point, showing that Europe is not a mere spectator. It is a strategic actor which is capable of initiative, unity, and responsibility. In that context, the partnership with India bears particular importance. India is a strategic partner with which we share common beliefs, our belief in a stable world order based on international law, the UN Charter, and respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now, as our relationship is being strengthened with the upcoming summit, we are developing a new strategic agenda for the 5 years to come, which will touch on trade, new technology, AI, with the Summit for AI Action, which will take place in India in February, space, energy, civil nuclear power, and security. France is presiding the G7 this year, and India holds the BRICS presidency. As such, they have a responsibility to make sure that the divides that exist in the world today do not lead to conflict. We talked today about Ukraine. We talked about the importance of a lasting and just peace based on international law. Yesterday's summit in Paris was a turning point. showing unity between Ukraine, the coalition of the willing, and the US on the key question of security guarantees. We also discussed the situation in Venezuela. We condemned the authoritarian action of Nicolas Maduro's regime and the violations of international law by permanent members of the Security Council. We believe that the transition should be peaceful and respect the will of the Venezuelan people. We also expressed our solidarity to India when it comes to the terrorist threat that it is facing. This needs to be a common fight. And in France, we are commemorating today the 11 years since the terrorist attack at Charlie Hebdo. And I'd like to thank my colleague Johan Wadefull, who will later pay tribute to the victims. I thank you, and I'd like to give the floor now to Johan Wadefull.
Merci beaucoup. Vielen herzlichen Dank, lieber Jean-Noël, liebe Kollegen hier. Es ist immer gut, nach Paris zu kommen. Und ich bin besonders dankbar, dass dieses Jahr so unruhig begonnen hat mit einem Treffen des Weimarer Dreiecks beginnt.
That this new year should begin with a meeting between the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Weimar Triangle. No country can be more grateful for this than Germany, given that we have as friends our two neighbors, even though they were attacked in a very cruel way, and the federal government is deeply aware of that and is happy to be able to cooperate, as this can serve as a springboard to new initiatives and an even better cooperation, including with our Indian colleague. Jean-Noël is absolutely right. The EU is facing large-scale challenges, but at the same time has demonstrated that it can be a strategic player. We are negotiating free trade agreements with the key states in Latin America, Mercosur states, India. And I do hope that this agreement will be finalized shortly. This shows that Europe can take action at strategic times, that we are a reliable partner. The agreements that we are signing are robust. And this is a message that we want to convey at this difficult time. We also demonstrated our ability to act as a union shortly before Christmas during a decisive meeting of the European Council, when we offered Ukraine a €90 billion loan. We need to be clear and remain clear that Europe stands with Ukraine and not allow Russia to continue to wage this war of attrition that it hopes to win. That reliability, that clarity in the European position is necessary, and we expressed it yet again yesterday, Jean-Noël, during our conversation on the phone with Marco Rubio. The time has come to negotiate seriously, to up the ante, increase pressure on Russia. Ukraine has showed its willingness to proceed towards a ceasefire and have serious negotiations, and now the time has come for Russia to do the same. Capacity for action was also demonstrated by the coalition of the willing, by our American partners, and our unrelenting effort for peace. And I'm happy that today, as part of the Weimar Triangle, we can continue to discuss, or we could continue to discuss, security guarantees for Ukraine, which will be fundamental to safeguard long-term peace. We also discussed the security architecture of Europe. Faced with growing threats, hybrid attacks, cybercrime, increasing militarization, Europe needs to act with determination. Our response to the erosion of international norms needs to be that we continue to defend them, but we cannot stop there. We have a duty to ensure that Europe be in a position to defend its security interests autonomously. Now, we are not seeking isolation or to undertake unilateral initiatives. We shall rely on our strength, which is unity, and we want to further our partnerships with other countries. That is why I am all the more pleased that our friend Dr. Jaishankar is with us today, because India is not just an important trade partner, it is a central player in the global security architecture. Together, we shoulder a responsibility to maintain a stable international order. In the Indo-Pacific region, India plays a pivotal role, for instance, in safeguarding maritime thoroughways. And this is essential for security and prosperity in the region. Our resilience is not limited to our ability to defend ourselves. We also need a robust economy that can withstand crisis. India, as such, is a decisive and much appreciated partner with whom we share both opportunities and challenges. In recent years, with the disruption of global supply chains, our vulnerabilities came to the fore, in particular when it comes to critical raw materials. We need to diversify. And the free trade agreement between the EU and India is an important step towards that diversification, which shall ensure that both markets can be more resilient. That is why it is essential to finalize the agreement in Brussels. Dear colleagues, the challenges we are facing are immense. These are difficult times for us all, but it is cooperation with like-minded partners that constitutes a strength. We, as Europeans, are prepared to spare no effort to safeguard peace in Europe and also contribute to a just and stable international order, and it is great to be among friends. Thank you.
Szanowni Państwo, po przerwie noworocznej dyplomacja przyspieszyła. Przedwczoraj spotkanie doradców do spraw bezpieczeństwa narodowego w Kijowie. Wczoraj tu w Paryżu koalicja chętnych, a dzisiaj bardzo dziękuję Jean-Noël, że
Yesterday we held the Coalition of the Willing in Paris, and now we're here today again in Paris. And I'd like to thank you, Jean-Noël, for meeting us today in the context of the Weimar Triangle, together with our Indian counterpart. It's very important. We need to intensify, to reinforce our dialogue with the countries outside of Europe. And I'm the last representative of the Weimar Triangle to take the floor today, and I'd like to underline what was said before by our colleagues. Of course, we would like to strengthen our cooperation with India, including in the field of security and defense. And we're very much hoping that a document to that effect can be signed on the occasion of the European Summit with India on the 27th of January. I hope that this will also enable to make closer India and European possessions regarding Ukraine. The relations with between the European Union and such a strategic partner as India are very important to us, and I express my satisfaction regarding the reduction of import of Russian oil to India, because this is financing the war machine of Putin. So it is something that we can discuss further as well when I travel to India next week. It's important that we sign the trade partnership between the European Union and India as soon as possible.
panu ministrowi za deklarację
It covers some sensitive areas.
elastyczności w niektórych
And I would like to thank
Dziękuję jeszcze raz za zaproszenie
Minister
do Paryża.
Jaishankar for his willingness to show flexibility in on a number of matters, and thank you for this invitation to coming to Paris on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm from AFP. Question to Minister Barrot. This morning, you talked about a response plan in the face of U.S. intimidation, and I was wondering whether you discussed that this afternoon with your counterparts. And a question to all of you as well, more specifically on that U.S. intimidation to Greenland. What can you offer Greenland to support its security and safeguard it? What can you, as the Weimar Triangle, bring to the EU and to other members of the EU? Thank you. I have a question for Minister Waterfall. How can NATO respond, given that its most important and most powerful member, the United States, is taking action against the member Denmark? Is that the end of NATO?
Bitte eine Frage an Herrn Sikorski.
The sale of Greenland to the US, could that be an option? And a question to Mr. Sikorski. The Federal Chancellor said that security guarantees, that as security guarantees, German troops could be deployed on NATO territory on the border with Ukraine. Could that be the case in Poland?
Thank you. Maybe one last question so that we have everyone together over there.
So this is Rohini from DD India. So you choose Europe as your first visit in 2026. So what role do you see for Europe in our foreign policy?
Et je répondrai à la dernière question en disant que nous sommes très honorés.
And to answer the last question, I'd like to say that we're very honored that Dr. Jaishankar chose Europe and indeed France to kick off this diplomatic year 2026.
Travaux en cours au Quai d'Orsay n'ont
now,
pas
when it
commencé
comes
hier, en réalité n'ont pas commencé
to work in
avant.
progress at the Quai d'Orsay, of course, our work didn't start today or yesterday. But what I said this morning was that indeed we have started thinking about how we might defend our interests if our interests came to be threatened, and if France and the EU were to be intimidated, wherever that intimidation might stem from. And that is something I mentioned to my Polish and German partners, and indeed that we will bring to our European partners, because that is the question being raised. How can Europe, how can the EU deter from any form of threat to its security or its interests? So there's nothing new about that, in a sense. And then when it comes to Greenland specifically, again, I don't want to repeat myself. And the President of the Republic himself went there in June of last year. I went in August to reaffirm our support to the Danish and Greenlandic authorities. And we announced the opening of a consulate as well in Greenland. And as the Danish Prime Minister said, Greenland is not for sale. Greenland is not for the taking. Long gone are the times where you could buy or sell Louisiana. And Denmark can count on the solidarity of European countries. The heads of state and government said so in a shared statement yesterday.
Ja, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, Sie kennen die Erklärung das gemeinsame Statement der 7 europäischen Staaten.
You are familiar with the
Thematik, die Grönland
common statement issued
vollkommen klar,
by
über das Schicksal
European
Grönlands
states on
entscheiden
Greenland.
die Grönländerinnen und Grönländer und das Königreich
It is
Dänemark
clear that it falls to Greenlanders
gehört.
to determine their own fate, as well as to the Kingdom of
der
Denmark.
Souveränität, der territorialen Integrität und
Of course,
der Unverletzlichkeit der Grenzen.
in keeping with the principles of the UN Charter, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the inviolability of borders.
Und dazu gibt es auch die jederzeitige Bereitschaft, das offene im Bündnis.
And all of these aspects of the article need to be discussed within the NATO Council. And I am pleased that our counterpart, Marco Rubio, announced his wish to discuss this with the Danish government. That would be very useful.
Verteidigungsbündnis der Welt. Und
NATO
das Jahr 2025 war das
is
stärkste
the
Jahr
most
der
important
ersten
military alliance
die
in the
NATO
world, and 2025 was an important year, the most important year for NATO, with the enlargement of NATO. Finland, Sweden joined NATO.
seit längerer Zeit
Second,
gehabt in Den Haag.
we also celebrated the most successful NATO summit in a long time in The Hague, where we decided
Aufzuwenden. Das ist eine klare
to commit up to 5% of EU countries' GDPs to the military.
hat von Anfang an deutlich
And
gemacht,
this was something that President Trump wanted to see from Germany as well. And the federal government said from the very beginning that it was prepared to do more
in dem Gipfel
to increase military spending, and that summit was highly successful. During that summit, we all reiterated our attachment to Article 5, as did the United States yet again.
klar sich zur NATO
And I'd like to say that President Trump stated very clearly that he believed in NATO, that the US supported the military alliance and an alliance with Europe. And we believe in the future of the alliance, and I have no doubt that we shall cooperate very closely and that our alliance will be what it always has been, the best military alliance in the world.
Co do Grenlandii, zgadzam się z kolegami. Premier Polski Donald Tusk podpisał deklarację, która już została wspomniana.
I agree. The Prime Minister Donald Tusk signed the statement that was just mentioned. And I would just add, on issues of land, peace and war, these issues are in the purview of the US Congress, and I would like to know the point of view of Congress on Greenland. A question was asked of me on the presence of German troops in Poland.
Mojego kraju w Sojuszu Północnoatlantyckim, w Korpusie Północno-Zachodnim w Szczecinie.
And I would like to remind you that we had German troops in Stettin, and that predates our NATO accession, as well as in Bydgoszcz, my town. And recently we organized military exercises in Poland, and it was actually a German general commanding Polish tanks. And the reverse occurred as well. We're very grateful to Germany for the presence of German troops in Rzeszów at the Jaishankar airfield, and they participated in the anti-air defense of that airfield, which is very important in the context of support to Ukraine. Now, I won't go into detail, but if we have a ceasefire and if we have a monitoring operation, well, in that case, a number of countries have already stated that they would be a part of preparatory action in Poland. France is among them. But this is something we will be discussing with our chiefs of staff. But it would not be new when it comes to Germany.
Thank you. Let me just respond to the last question, which was, in a sense, you asked me, why did I come to Europe? I think it was a very conscious choice. It was a choice which reflected our belief that this relationship with Europe is really poised to grow to the next level. And when I look back, even at the last few weeks, we've had discussions within India on matters dealing with Europe, the FTA, technology issues, semiconductors, railways, defense, aviation, railways. So there's really, it's a very substantive relationship, much more that can be done. But other than that, I think there is a larger discussion today that the world needs about the global order. What kind of world do we want to live in? What would be the norms and the other related issues. And because I think Europe is such an important player in global politics, it's also necessary that India strengthen its relationship. I think we can bring more stability both into the international economy and global politics. And that really is why I'm here. I should add, by the way, as soon as I get back, that we would be expecting to welcome Chancellor Merz in India. And as I said, soon President Macron will be there. A number of other European leaders are also slated to visit India very shortly.
Merci beaucoup à toutes et tous.
Thank you very much.